can't be here. Test 1, 2.
What is today? Fourth?
The 24th.
We good?
Ah,
We're live? We're live? We are live? All right. The August 24th meeting of the Parks Committee will come to order, and we'll note that Alder Campbell is present, Alder Eck, Alder Stoyer, Alder Weary. We're all here. Happy to be here. And can I get an approval of the agenda?
Move to approve?
second?
Motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Campbell to approve the agenda. Any changes? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. C, approval of minutes. What are your wishes?
Move to approve them.
Second.
Motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Stoyer to approve the minutes. Any changes? Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Regular business, number 1. Consideration with possible action on the purchase of a used Nebula Z ride for $775,000 from Zamperla for Bay Beach Amusement Park. Director.
So at last week's Council of the Whole ARPA funding request meeting, the council made a recommendation to fund $800,000 in ARPA funding towards the purchase of a used ride at Bay Beach Amusement Park. So this, as you all know, this recommendation will go to next week's city council meeting for final approval for the funding. So at this point, it's still a recommendation. So tonight, I'm seeking approval to actually purchase the specific ride using the ARPA funding. So we're proposing to purchase the used Nebula Z ride from Zamperla. This particular ride we'll be purchasing is the first ride that was in production of this model. So it was built in 2019, and for the first year, the manufacturer toured this ride at various trade shows just to showcase the ride. And it was then sold to a family entertainment center in Texas, where it operated for 2 seasons. And because they were a family entertainment center and not an amusement park, they found that their operations were not set up to really take care of the ride and maintain it to the recommended standards. So it just wasn't a good fit for them. So they sold it back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer is selling it on the market again. So the manufacturer is currently in the process of inspecting and refurbishing the ride, but as I mentioned, it was first built in 2019 and only used for two seasons in an indoor facility, and so it's basically a new ride for the most part. So if we were to purchase the ride, it would cost $1.4 million, and the manufacturer is selling it for $775,000. So the sale price includes refurbishing the rides, it includes delivery, and it also includes them sending a staff member to Green Bay for 5 days to teach us how to set the ride up, how to operate the ride, and how to maintain it properly. If we do purchase it, the ride will be delivered in April of 2023, and it'll likely be up and running by Memorial Day weekend because there's very little site work that has to go along with it. So this ride, we're anticipating it would cost 3 tickets to ride it, and riders must be a minimum of 42 inches tall. And we're estimating that in the first year of operations, it'll generate nearly $171,000 in revenue, and which means it would have a payoff of about 5 to 6 years is when the ride would pay for itself. After that, it's all profit. So there are several reasons why staff feels that this is the perfect fit for Bay Beach. So as you can see from the images in the agenda packet, it is a family fun ride. It's not really meant for tots. It's not meant as a thrill ride. It's a good ride that all members of the public, all age groups can ride. And it's an exciting ride. So it's not a thrill ride, it's an exciting ride. So a combination of the movement, colors, and lighting, it's really all very eye-catching too. So this ride will really be a showcase for the park. And then finally, really what sold us on this ride is it's in nearly new condition, and it's approximately half the cost of buying it new. Typically, when we purchased used rides, they're used and they're well used, and there's a reason that somebody is selling them because they want something new. And that's not the situation for this ride. So in my opinion, it's a very good deal, a good use of the ARPA funding, and I would recommend approval to purchase the ride. The only recommendation I would make is if you do approve it today, I would make it contingent upon funding approval by the city council.
Thanks, Director. Questions from the committee? All right.
What spot is this going to go in?
It hasn't been determined yet, the exact location. We'll release that once we know. We can talk about it at a future Parks Committee. We have a few ideas. Some of them might cost a little more than others, but in general, it'll be, I think the most expensive option is less than $100,000 to install it. And then it's cheaper from there depending on where it goes. And we do have a little bit of extra money in the ARPA funding, $25,000, because they're setting aside $800,000. That would go towards part of the installation costs, and then the rest of the installation costs would likely come out of our development account at Bay Beach Amusement Park. So the revenues that that we make this year will likely fund the installation of
Next year.
it. Above and beyond the $775,000. That is just the cost to purchase it and get it delivered.
Oh, Stoyer.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed this at length at City Council last week and found that Bay Beach is one of the few revenue generators in the city. We're normally with, you do city services and that, but we looked at this very carefully. We talked about it for a long time. Bay Beach ended up losing $2.25 million during COVID. And I think the fact, I'm thankful that you put in the projections here, Director, just talking about that it'll take a number of years to pay off. These are federal monies that we're getting, so it's not coming out of the city per se. So we will start realizing a turnaround in profit in about 5 years, but in a sense we'll be seeing it pretty quickly because these are ARPA funds. So I really feel that this is an important addition. You know, it might seem expensive at first, but the fact that you got it at a cheaper rate and it's still fairly new, and that it'll be good for what you said, 30 years at least. Could be.
We anticipate 20, 30 plus years. I mean, some of our rides are much older than that.
Right. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. If I aren't any more comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Alder Stoyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Campbell. Any discussion on that? I appreciate you putting in the table of revenue projections because it does help clearly lay out everything we put out there, unless we have some bad luck with it. And this one being new, $1.4 million over 10 years. That's what we need more of, and glad you found it. Keep your eye out to keep going park. All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Goes to council. Everything we discussed tonight at Parks goes to council next week, Tuesday. So we recommend to the full council next Tuesday. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the request by Steve Seymour, 2544 Heather Road, parcel 214283, for approval to rebuild a shed in the Ellis Creek Greenway behind the residence.
So I'll give a brief introduction to this topic, and then I would recommend opening the floor for Mr. Seymour to speak. But as you know, at the last Park Committee meeting, you approved an encroachment policies. And the intent of that policy was to deal with situations similar to this. So per the approved policy, we'll be working with homeowners to remove built items, stored items, and gardens that are built within city property. In addition, property owners will not be able to continue to mow and maintain parkland. So we have not begun enforcing this policy yet, and it's likely we won't be ready to do so for a few months. So there are a few internal processes that we have to get in place before we can actually begin implementing the policy that you approved at the last meeting. For this particular property, the owner contacted the city probably about a month ago, I would say, maybe longer, and wanted to ask for approval to rebuild a shed that is currently located on city property. So if you look at the agenda packet, you'll see a map, an aerial photograph showing where the shed is located. He indicated when I spoke to him that he lived in the house for the last 25 years. And the shed was there when he moved in. So the previous property owner built the shed, and it's now in poor condition, and that's why he'd like to rebuild it in the existing location. So I did go through our historic files, and I couldn't find any formal agreements with the previous property owner or any property owner on that site to allow the shed to be constructed. So when the request came to me, when he tried to get a permit to build the shed, I initially did deny the request, and he came forward and asked for approval to discuss it with the park committee to get your opinion on it. So and in this situation, as you can see in the air photo, as it relates to our encroachment policy, the shed is on city property. Plus, you can see in the photo that the property owner is mowing a considerable amount of the greenway. We're not really here to discuss the mowing portion of it today. I mean, if it comes up, you can ask questions. But really, he's just seeking approval for the shed at this point. So I guess from here, I would recommend you open the floor to interested parties.
Thanks, Ryder.
Motion to open the floor.
Second.
Motion by Alder Steuer, second by Alder Campbell to open the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Step forward, give us your name and address, and we'll go from there.
Well, one of the issues I had was
Could I just get your name and address? Just for the record, if I could get your name and address.
Steve Seymour, 2544 Heather Road.
Thank you.
Here's some pictures of the condition of the shed deck and stuff that I've got it raised up so it doesn't roll down the hill. Well, it's not on my property, so I guess it's really not my shed, that's what I'm saying, you know, in one sense at the same time, right? The depths of the lots, I mean, if you look at the maps, I'm sitting on less than 110 feet. When you look at the pictures that you have there, when he was down at the end of the cul-de-sac, there's the gazebo built past the property line. They got 166 feet. I mean, all his property, they could have, you know, built something. But then you see by the map on my pictures that, you know, there's only
I presume that's a
109 feet plus.
pool, correct? A pool right there?
In my yard,
And that's been there for a long time?
well, that was there when I bought the house.
It was there.
Yeah. So I'm really limited in any place to build a building. And that, you know, one of the suggestions I have is to make everybody happy, make your city happy, everybody else, extend the lot line. Tax me for it. And put on my property tax. There's a way to, it would make it legal for me to restore that shed in St. Mary. By doing the right thing, I went out, reached out to the city, I could have just probably rebuilt it, nobody had ever known. And,
How big is the shed?
How
big is that shed?
8 by 10.
8 by 10. There's no way you can squeeze that in by the swimming pool. I mean, in a way, it looks like it would fit. I'm just asking. It would be tight.
Move it up.
It would be tight. It would be tight. But it could
And I have
conceivably
letters.
fit in the corner.
Well, it's coming down.
I know, but if you built a new one.
I have letters from both of my neighbors, either side here, both of their neighbors are Michael. But letters from each one of them that saying they're fine with me rebuilding their shed where it was, it's not really wrong or anything. And you see by the condition of this, and the shed is just as bad.
So you
It would
bought,
just be-
how long, I mean, you've been in this house for a while,
A good 25 years.
25 years. So it was there when you moved in.
Right.
And we've had other situations where people have built in the right of way, in the
But
parkway.
it's not harming anything.
No, I know, but I'm
It's
just
out of the
saying-
way, it's not an eyesore to my neighbors.
No, and I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying that
The
a
water
lot
will never
of
get up.
these are set up for drainage purposes.
Right, but the
for
water will never get up that high. We're so high that we'd flood out the houses down the road. I mean, the cul-de-sac is about the same level as their basements, top of their basements. I mean, they all got flooded out. We had that flood a couple of years ago. And the water came up, maybe halfway up that hill. That water would never come close to where my shed is.
I've seen some crazy flooding lately.
Well,
You know, I
all the flooding we've had in Green Bay, the one time I've been there, and the last one was a major one, and 20 years ago we had high floods, and it didn't even come a quarter way up that hill. I mean, I'm at the highest elevation there. And
Elder Eck.
Mr. Seymour, I don't know if you're aware that we just recently did pass a policy.
we're trying to create a policy for people not to cut the grass and stuff like that. It's just-
Any kind of
Trying to enforce it.
encroachment on public property, like city property, like cutting the lawn or putting on sheds, so.
That's considered, not to interrupt you, but that's considered a park, not a map, a city park. And the kids have been down there, and adults golfing, practicing their golf, the kids are down there playing soccer. They sled down there, they use the park as a park, it's a walkway, they're down there playing water, catching frogs, turtles, whatever. I mean, it's an asset to the city and to the people that live in this city, and people take care of their properties so nicely. And the thing is, the root system and the grass is what holds that property together. If wherever there's long grass and stuff, it's turned into a swamp, and when it overruns, it washes out and gullies everything out. It takes away the dirt from the trees down there and stuff, and the root system, and trees are falling down because of that. And keeping that area, keeping that property up, and the lawns cut nicely and whatever, strengthens the dirt and preserves that area rather than destroying it. There's nothing, people keeping up that area is nothing but an asset to the city of Green Bay. To tell us to overgrow it and turn it into a swamp is,
Mr. Seymour, Alder Eck was speaking about that. I kind of wanted to hear what she had to say, if you would let that. I would like her to, you were talking about that policy.
Well, yeah, we just passed the policy, and I know you said you probably could have left it there, it would have gone unnoticed, but most likely, you would have gotten a letter asking you to remove the shed, if my understanding is
Or
correct?
did.
Oh, well, I don't know, the letters haven't gone out yet, have they?
No, it'll be a few months before we actually implement the policy, so.
Yeah.
which are just, I mean, to go after the taxpayers like that, property owners, along all these cul-de-sacs and stuff like that in Green Bay, opening up a terrible can of worms. I mean, there isn't a person that lives in that area that bought these properties. With cut lawns and that, how can you turn around and tell them 25 years later, you're not allowed to use this property anymore? How do you turn around and do that to a taxpayer? And people are
But
maintaining.
it's not your
Did you-
land, it's not
excuse
your
me,
land.
Did you have anything else, Elder?
Pardon?
Elder Eck?
No, I just want to make sure that you're aware that this is something that you most likely would have gotten a letter regarding it because of it being, of
Well,
its
you're gonna
location.
Upset, yeah.
Citywide.
Citywide, it's not just you.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
And the whole city, the whole city in an uproar in these areas. I mean,
It's not their
opening up a
property,
Big
though.
can, huh?
It's not their property.
Well, it's not, doesn't make any difference if it's not your property, it's a park. They're supposed to, the city of Green Bay should be maintaining that park and cutting the grass themselves.
Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
For Mr. Seymour? Otherwise, did you have any other comments before we talk about it as a committee?
Talk about that.
Well, what we'll do is we'll close the floor and then we'll discuss as a committee and decide what we want to do and then send it to council. So if you have any last comments you want to offer, now's the time.
Well, I think I said about rezoning my property, it's just mine. I mean, I'm not talking about just a little area where the shed is, I'm talking about go back the whole width of my yard. I'll pay tax on it. I mean, I'm really stuck in a catch-22. I have no place to go with this in Zimmerman. This property was basically yours when you buy the house. It's basically yours and everybody else in the neighborhood,
I
any
mean,
kid that walks through
I'm
there.
pretty up on this with my property, but you realize that even if it possibly could be done, you'd have to go through zoning to rezone this park, because it's probably
Well, I'm just saying
zoned
if you
different.
just bumped it out.
I know, but to rezone that, then you'd have to get it all resurveyed and redone, so that's a couple $1,000 more. Just realize the costs in here. But then what do we do? Because then this guy, and this guy, and this guy want to do it.
Well, the thing is if you look at the property, I have less than 110 feet. And you look around, a lot of these are 160 feet.
Well, that's
150 feet
the
up.
way they were cut up for many, many, many years, you know, and there's nothing you can do about
Because the
that.
land's more level back there, they gave them more yard, but this is a hill, it's totally useless.
Honestly, maybe it's not even called buildable because it's on a hill. There's a lot, when you say open up a can of worms, I'm just trying to let you know what kind of worms are in there. I mean, this is a zoning change to give you the land, and it's a tax thing, I'm sure. I mean, it's pretty in-depth. All these people are gonna get a letter saying, you're gonna change the zone.
Well, letters-
They don't care if you're taxed, but then they're gonna want theirs done, and they're gonna want theirs done, and they're gonna, then where do you stop?
Once I say, well, this would never, okay.
I think
Or I understand what you're saying.
personally, you could put it right there and that'd be fine.
Well, that's-
Honestly,
that's-
you only get
That-
two buildings
that-
on your
that
property. so-
That part of the way they did it, it's two different hills going on. It'd be really tough trying to put a shed right there. And because it's so, there's barely enough room to get off the lot line enough to build one to begin with.
Well, if it's good enough to put a swimming pool on, it's good enough to put a building on.
I didn't put the swimming pool.
I don't-
I didn't put a building. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's not really hurting anything, but it's not an eyesore.
Any other questions for Mr. Seymour?
No.
No. Anything else to add here, Mr. Seymour? And otherwise, we'll get to work as a committee and see what we come up with.
I guess not.
Appreciate it.
I'm just saying there's, it's been there 25 years, never been an issue to anyone. My neighbors are happy with it. I've been paying taxes to City of Green Bay my whole life, along with other people, and, you know, it's pretty sad to go against taxpayers and property owners when there's much more bigger things in the agenda in Green Bay to worry about than stuff like cutting the grass or making an area nice so the children have, the neighbor kids are down there enjoying it. Why would you want to take that away from the homeowners, people in that area? It's kind of sad that you would go after the taxpayers and the families like that for something that's considered a park. And then you want to destroy it, and
Appreciate it.
and I'm not, that shed is not bothering anybody in the city of Green Bay. It's not gonna be an effect on the waterway. The water will never get up that high. If it gets up that high, the whole city's gonna be underneath water.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Anybody else here for this item? Anybody? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close the floor.
Motion by Alder Steuer, second by Alder Eck to close the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion or questions for staff? Alder Steuer?
Well, some good points were brought up. I think I kind of, what Alder Campbell brought up, in a sense. You know, I'm looking, in fact, I'll bring up a personal story. I used to live on Bellevue Street back in the 80s, and we had, the East River Parkway was behind me. And I put a garden in there. You know, it's city property, but I had a huge garden. Sorry, I'm fessing up now. But I used city property to grow things. And it didn't really bother, well, the floor's closed now. But was anybody hurt? Not really. But if somebody would have called me on it, I would have had to, take off. So, I look at the property, it's limited, I understand that. And the shed was there before he bought it, I understand that. But the issue up here, Alder Campbell brings up a great point, is that you would have to rezone that, and it costs money to rezone. And who's to say that there are other people along that stretch that would want to rezone it as well? So it's not even a matter of flooding or cutting the grass. This is just pure and simple zoning procedure.
I think if I mess, I think it
Did you hear
It would-
else?
it would-
One
I think
person at a time.
Closed.
Hold
The
it,
floor
yeah.
is closed.
I think this is
One,
just,
hold me, hold on,
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell.
thought you were done.
One person at a time, and when he's
I'm
done, then I'll
good.
recognize
I'm-
another one. And if we want to open the floor, we can, but right now it's just our committee, and we'll gladly open it if there's new information. But you don't have to feel like everything that's said you have to counter. Don't feel that way, otherwise we'll be going back and forth. I mean, you can, certainly, but I'm gonna go back to you.
I'm good for now.
Mr. Mayor. Okay.
I may make some other comments, but I'm good for now.
Okay, and then I know Alder Eck poked me earlier, or looked at me, and so why don't we go to you?
Okay.
And then we'll go to you, Steve.
Well, I had a question for Director Ditchay. Is it considered a park? And if it is a park, would the city then maintain it and cut the grass if they were to stop cutting it?
Yeah, so the park is considered a greenway.
What'd you say? I can't hear.
Oh, I'm talking to the director.
She asked if the park, if it's considered a park or not. So the city classifies Ellis Creek Greenway as a natural area. It's a greenway. It's not a neighborhood park. It's not a community park. It's not a mini park. It's a natural greenway is what it is. And so we would treat that property just like we would treat any other natural greenway, which is it grows natural. The intent is not to mow these areas. The intent is to provide natural habitat to improve the waterway, to improve the wildlife. It's not necessarily meant as an active recreation area, which is what a traditional park is with mowed turf. So it's considered a greenway, not a park.
And the second question is a rezoning of that area even an option?
There are two options moving forward if you want to consider this as a viable solution to allow him to rebuild the shed. There's only two options that I see as applicable. One would be to sell the property to the adjacent property owner. In that particular instance, it is a zoning issue because it's zoned as city green space is what it's zoned for. It's not zoned for residential. So there would be a substantial cost in order to make that change because you would have to hire a surveyor to create a certified survey map, and then they'd have to go through the zoning process to actually be able to zone it as residential. Typically, those costs range in the $2,000 to $3,000 range to go through that process. And in this situation, if you do want to go that route, usually that falls on the property owner to pay that, not the city. And then, of course, there's the price to actually purchase the property, because usually there's a sale purchase along with that. Now, in this situation, I can't even tell you if that's a viable solution, because oftentimes when we acquire property in Greenway, sometimes there's a deed restriction which prevents us from selling that to anybody. And really that depends on how we acquired the property. So if we used any grant dollars to purchase the property initially, then there's likely a caveat right in the deed saying we are not physically able to sell that property ever. Now, if we purchase that using city money, then that deed restriction isn't in there. So I can't even tell you at this point without doing more research if we're even legally able to sell it. Now, the other option is a much cheaper option, and that would be to allow an easement, where we just grant the property owner an easement of, say, 20 feet, or just carve out that little stretch to allow him to rebuild the shed in that location. In that case, there probably would be no cost involved. It would just be an approval that the city could grant. Again, I'd have to make sure that there are no deed restrictions preventing us from doing that. But with an easement, what you could potentially do is set some caveats to that easement. So for example, we could make a conditional that if the property were to be ever sold, that at that point the shed has to be removed. And that's another option. You could also put the caveat in there that it can never be replaced again. So as soon as it gets damaged or, hits that lifespan, then you can't replace it at that time. So, I mean, those are the two potential options if that's something you want to consider. I guess to kind of talk about that a little bit more in a little more detail is, as you know, we just put the policy in place. I can almost guarantee that we're going to get many very similar requests, because like I mentioned, there's a number of property owners who are in the same situation. And so I just want to make sure that if there ever is a consideration where we would allow that there's really a justifiable reason to do it. And so what I would recommend in all of these situations is we kind of handle it like the Zoning Board of Appeals would handle it. So they only grant variances to do things like this if it meets certain terms and conditions. And in this case, well, I'll just kind of go over their policy a little more. So the owner must be able to show that there's an unnecessary hardship in order for it to be considered. And typically, financial hardship is not an adequate argument for the zoning board of appeals. If it just costs more money to do it differently, that typically gets denied at a zoning board. And variances also typically are not approved if the landowner is able to build something that is compliant within the ordinances. So in this situation, what I would recommend, if you want my recommendation, would be to have him see if he can build it on his own property first. And if that is not able to be done for whatever reason, then maybe at that point, then there's a hardship that he can prove. I did reach out to the planning department to ask, would he be able to build this on his own property? I don't have a clear answer for you today. The one thing that might be a barrier for him getting approval to build this shed on his property is you're only able to have so much impervious surface on your entire parcel. And when you look at the map, you can see with the pool there and other developments, it's very close right now whether or not he's at that capacity and whether or not adding that shed would add to that capacity. And so he can apply for a permit. If that's not an obstacle, then he would get a building permit and he could put it on his own property. If he's already at that capacity, square footage wise, then he could always apply for a variance and make an argument to get a variance to the square footage capacity. So my recommendation would be to deny this request for those reasons that we gave. And then have him, if he still wants to rebuild the shed, he can go through the permit process. If he's not granted the permit, he would have to go through the variance process, and he might get the variance if it's a square footage issue. If both are denied, then I think it's worth further discussion. And whether or not you approve it at that point, that would be a different discussion than it is now. Because a lot of what I heard right now is, yeah, I think it'll fit on your property, there's room right here. Based on my discussion, he might have to get a variance in order to put it on his property. But we don't know that until he fills out the paperwork and submits the permit to do so. So that would be my recommendation, is just to deny the request. And then if he proceeds and gets denied, he can just come back and make a second request.
Thanks, Director.
Thank you.
Alder Campbell?
You have an answer?
Well, I'm pretty aware of a situation like this, and I know you're allowed 2 buildings on your property, on a residential property.
Can you speak up a little bit?
You're allowed 2 buildings on your, and I'm only speaking for I know, I'm not, but I have looked into it. So I have a similar, someone had a dog cage, now they want to build put a shed on in place of it, because they're beagles and they want to keep them outside, but they want them out there in the winter. It can only be so many square feet. Like, they bought a bigger building, purchased the building, and found out it was 2 feet too big. So they had to return that building and order another building. Them are the kind of restrictions, literally just put a metal shed like you got on your own property, let alone on someone else's property. My other thing that I got here, and then I'm sorry I'm speaking to you, but I'm trying to clarify my knowledge on it. I haven't really heard much of you trying to put it on the property. I think it fits, crowds it out a little bit, but then I guess you gotta find another solution.
It has to go through the.
But as far as the zoning, I think you're gonna be on an uphill battle just to purchase that property and get the zoning changed, because I don't know, but for a small little building, I think the easiest way is for you to try to fit it in on the property, because this is more than a year-long process just to get it through zoning probably, and get
Well,
variances and And you'll have to come, it'll, literally, to change the zone, we'll have to come before the council, the full council, to change it, because I would happen to think on a really situation like this, that it's gonna get, it'll be a zoning issue more than it is a park issue, more than it's cutting the grass, more than the greenway. My question here too, though, to Dan, Mr. Ditchite, is how did it fall into the Parks Department? Is it just because of the greenway, or it seems like a gray area of a greenway versus a park? And I almost think it should have went to zoning and not to parks.
Well, the request came to the planning department first, because he tried to pull a building permit to actually rebuild the shed in the existing location. So, obviously, red flags were raised, and they came to us because it's our property and said, did you give approval for the shed to be there? Would you be in support of this request if we were to move ahead with it? So he did the right thing. I mean, he tried to pull a permit to build a shed. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. It just raised some red flags because it should have never been there in the first place.
Anything else, Mr. Campbell?
No, I'm good.
Elder Sawyer, and then Alder.
Mr. Seymour, I understand the frustration you're going through. So, I mean, looking at your property and what you've got and everything that's been talked about, the fact you do cut the grass, I know other people that have cut grass on parkways and things like that because they think they're doing a good thing. But again, it is a natural area. So we have we got Berry Creek, we got Mahone Creek, we got a lot of these different areas that people have been cutting grass on over the years. It looks neat, but it's not the intent. The intent is to keep it a natural area. I know you're shaking your head, but it's supposed to be a natural area. So what he mentioned, what Director Ditchite mentioned, I think might be the route to go. Still go through the process, apply, for a permit for that. And then you might have to go to the Board of Appeals, correct?
Potentially, yeah. It depends
Potentially the
on
Board of
what the
Appeals.
square footage is.
Now, I've gone to many Board of Appeals meetings, and a lot of times there will be a situation like this, and they will talk about it. If it's a hardship, they'll listen. I'm not guaranteeing that they would vote for it, but if it's a hardship in your mind's eye, I think the fact that you want to build it, if you could build it on your property, again, Alder Campbell brought it up, and so did Director Ditchite, that there might not be enough room because you have your house, you got a pool. There's not a lot of areas to do that. To rezone that, it would be thousands of dollars to rezone that and then to purchase the land, and that would be on the citizen to do that. I don't know if is even worth it. I mean, the shed is going to be a third of the price of everything you do just to get that to be allowed. To me, that wouldn't be worth it, me personally. So, my suggestion, I'm going to probably agree with the director on this and just say that if you want to continue this process, is to continue with the permitting process and then go to Board of Appeals. They meet once a month, and they're very open-minded. They try to be, and they'll listen if it's a hardship. They will do that. So that's kind of the way I'm at it.
Thanks, Elder Sawyer. Rick?
Oh, I was just saying, when you're talking about the rezoning, I think that doing that process and then maybe looking for the easement down the road if it ends up not being able to fit on your
I
property.
can't turn it off.
I would say the easement, after going through the process of trying to get it on the property, and if it doesn't fit or you go to the Board of Appeals and it's just not going to work, then going for the easement versus a rezoning. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Alder Eck. A couple comments here. Whether it was years of probably some lax enforcement, right? I don't know if we really tried real hard to see what people were doing next to public lands, especially our parks and greenways. But the new policy is going to address that and be more proactive. That's the hopes, at least in the next 6 months, 8 months. We're going to survey it and get those out so people are aware. My views on this have been consistent over 20 years. I've had very consistent views over 20 years that if you live next to a park, the park is public property. Colburn Park's in my district. I have a lot of people who would love to do a lot of things just over their fence in Colburn Park. And they've tried, but they can't. And I advise them that's not their land. natural greenways, natural areas like this are public property. They're meant to be enjoyed by all. And really would be difficult to give somebody special treatment because you live next to one. I mean, I would love to live next to one and build some things out there, a swing or put other amenities out there, but that's public land. So I'm going to agree, at some point, these have to be corrected. And we're going to probably be hearing a lot more as those letters go out. And so the other thing is, if you don't do anything, it'll encroach more and more and more and more. And pretty soon, there'll be all kinds of things, all the way down to the water and all our lands, because nobody said anything. So I would entertain a motion. Sounds, we could just deny if you'd like. Deny the
I
appeal.
don't know
To you.
where to go with it.
Well,
I don't think we have
I
to
would
give
say it's
direction.
refer back.
It says,
Not
it says,
My recommendation is just to deny the request, and then if he wants to proceed with building the shed on his own property, then he can just file for a permit to do so and go through that process. So we wouldn't have to refer it to any committees, he would just go through the standard building permit process. If that gets denied, well, then he can come back with another request and we can take it up again at a future meeting. But I don't think we need to refer it to any committees at this point. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
As a member of the Parks Committee, I really don't feel that it should be totally put on us to deny it. We're going to maybe take a little portion of it, but I really think this was the wrong direction, in my opinion, for it. And whether planning gave it to Mr. Ditchite, I'm going to make a motion to deny the request because of just too many things.
Motion by Alder Campbell, is there a second? Second
second.
by Alder Heck, under discussion. This does go to council next week, so Tuesday at 6. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. So it'll be at council at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, if
What's
you
that?
want to appeal it to the rest of the council. All right? Thank you.
Well, can I say some things?
Unless
And
the
there's some
committee wants
comments
to
that were made
reopen
during
it,
this
we've
meeting.
already discussed it, so if you
Well,
want to
this
talk to
isn't about,
council.
this is about false statements.
Well, I think,
Look,
Mr.
any
Campbell,
mo-
I'm sorry, Mr. Seymour, does the committee want to, I mean, we've discussed it already and decided, you're free to talk about it at council. I don't think, it's just my view, I don't think anything's going to change the committee's mind
Right,
tonight.
I'm not talking about the shed. I'm talking about things that were said here that are not factual.
All right, yeah, then I think we've moved past it. If it's
No,
not that
that's not
item,
on
then
the
we've
agenda.
addressed
Can I
it.
just say one thing?
So I think we're done. I appreciate it. Yeah. We have to keep things moving orderly, otherwise we could let anybody talk. I appreciate you coming, but I gotta
I'm
keep
going
things.
through after two
All right.
heart surgeries in 3 weeks, anxiety
I
and everything
appreciate it,
else.
Mr. Seymour.
Email?
I'd like to say one little thing. I think it's kind of unfair that I take my time and,
I appreciate it, Mr. Seymour, but we moved on to the next item. Thank you.
so when can I come here? When can I
It goes to
speak
city
you?
council on Tuesday at 6.
And you can
And if
appeal.
you want someone to open the floor to talk, I'm sure any of us, anybody would gladly open it up for you to talk. Definitely.
And the council chambers right next door.
Thank you.
Look at any city map. It's considered.
Number 3, request by Alder Weary to review with possible action all park positions, seasonal salaries, incentives, and job descriptions. How can the city of Green Bay become more attractive to workers? Not having all parks, pools, and other vital seasonal positions filled decreases the quality of life for residents. Do you want your pictures? Thank you. Director, I put this on, as I think I've mentioned in other park committee meetings, my daughter's friends and some parents actually of her friends work in different capacities for the city. And they all, because I'm on the council, like to come to me and say, I could work elsewhere, X, Y, Z. And it has peeled off a number of our employees to go work at these places. And I really put this in here and I know you guys are pounding your head and trying to find creative ways as a means before budget time. If we need to do something, I don't want to just throw money in it. That doesn't always work. As you said, some places offer higher wages and still have this issue, but I want this discussion to start now and not in November. Because, I do think pay can help, but I don't know, Dan, if you want to comment on it or
Yeah,
committee, but it's
I
an
guess-
important one because not having all our parks staffed by the parkies, not having all the pools open, And you know, I've forwarded you lots of emails about Colburn not being open. Holy moly, that's not, I probably got part of it. You probably got way worse than I did, but we need to fix it somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, as I've mentioned before, we've had a lot of challenges filling all of our seasonal staff positions, and that's not just lifeguards, it's our parking program, it's Bay Beach Amusement Park, it's all our maintenance staff, our park maintenance staff. So we were considerably short-handed. Also, Bay Beach ride operator and staff there too. So it was a challenging year. It has been for ever since the pandemic hit. We're assuming next year will be equally as challenging. I will tell you that this year we explored a lot of different options for getting the word out there and really promoting the benefits to working for the city of Green Bay. And I think that all of those initiatives that we tackled this year really did have an effect. Because it seemed like once the word got out, all of a sudden we'd have an influx of applicants for a little while, and then we'd have to go back out and campaign again. So, yeah, I think it's a discussion worth having. I think that as far as anything coming out of a discussion tonight or a recommendation, I really don't have anything prepared at this time, because I kind of wanted to hear what the intent of the committee was and maybe give me a little bit of guidance so that I could prepare something for you at a future meeting. I will tell you that in my budget proposal, I am pretty much proposing to increase our hourly rate for just about all of our seasonal positions. We're still kind of working through the budget right now to determine what that increase is. But we do have to get at least somewhat a little more comparable to the other municipalities. And we are lower than them right now. And even last year, we bumped up our seasonal salary. So we need to do it again next year in next year's budget. But I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more guidance from you to determine kind of what are you looking for, what would you like to see? Because I know for sure I'm going to do a financial end of things, and I know for sure we are going to be proactive on getting the word out. We're going to hit job fairs, we're going to hit the news, we're going to do social media, we're going to do everything we did this year because it was successful in the fact that I think we ended up with a lot more employees than we would have had we not gone through that effort. So, and we really ramped it up this year. So if there's something other than that you're in particular looking for, like what above and beyond we did this year, what are we looking at for this year other than pay, we can kind of put some thoughts together and give you more information prior to the budget. But if there was something else in particular you're interested in, just let me know.
Committee?
Oh, do we have
We'll go right down the line here.
Okay.
We'll just
So,
start on the end and then go
Campbell?
down. Alvin Campbell.
Being it's Bay Beach, I mean, just sitting here listening to things that I got in my head was, you know, and it's probably financial, but maybe I don't know if you do a refer a friend type thing, to where two girls or whatever, you know, I know when my kids say, hey, you should come work at Bay Beach, you know, or whatever. You know, maybe you're reaching the two versus one, and maybe they can go together and that kind of thing, kind of, you know, keep them busy, you know, like a bonus or a refer a friend or whatever the case may be. The other one is, do you work with the public school systems at all? That, like, can they get like credit for working in the civic duty or something? Maybe that'd be a really good, you know,
Yeah.
get credits or something.
Yeah, I know James has looked into that a little bit. I know you've had discussions with the school district on that. I know for some positions it makes more sense than others. I guess you have anything to add to that?
You know, we reached out to the school and talked about the different categories. Like there's some that are more, you know, they have to require a certain amount of hours, like 400 or 480 hours. There's other ones that are like work study, which is like 40 to 80 hours. They work with an outside agency to actually facilitate those programs. And when we contacted the outside agency, it was challenging to find ways to actually make that worth the time spent trying to facilitate those programs. Like we might have got maybe one or two workers, but it would have been a considerable amount of administrative time to then coordinate those programs. So by the time you did some of the things like Dan said, which you're doing PR, you're going to college, you know, college campuses, you're going and targeting the media and different things to try to get the word out there. It's just about how we prioritize our time. And we found that prioritizing our time on those avenues found more receptive applicants that were willing to apply than we did going through those channels. So we could look into that again and maybe develop what that looks like a little differently. Maybe there's ways to be creative and make that work for us, but we did look into it and it just wasn't a great, we got maybe one person that was interested that didn't even end up applying, for example. So,
Like, I don't know what's the last of the sports or events that the schools have before the summer, but I don't know if they can kind of let you kind of campaign at that a little bit even, or hand out something or whatever, I don't know.
and I will say it's increasingly challenging to, because everybody wants to do the same thing in the schools, essentially. I understand we're a government agency and we should be looked at as them more receptive to have us come in, but they actually had a lot of COVID guidelines as well. We couldn't even go into you can't go into their lunchrooms anymore. You can't go into their, facilities and actually, what we used to do is we actually sit right there at lunch and we'd get people in there and we'd get them all excited and, give them an application right on the spot. And those types of things were not as accessible as they were in the past, so.
Councilor Campbell?
Free bus ride to the parks, I don't know,
We can do
whatever it
that.
is.
We can, yeah, we'll figure it
Oh,
out.
direct?
Okay, yeah, so the bonus thing, I guess I thought of, I went to McDonald's recently, and in the bag was all the stuff, the benefits of working at McDonald's, and I read through it, and I was like, oh, it's like $15 an hour, and then help with tuition, training and things like that, and also benefits. What do you think, what is your percentage of college students that work these positions versus teenagers still in high school?
It depends on the position, but I'd have to say roughly half would be my guess.
Yeah, really, I was going to say the same. It depends on the position. If you're talking facility attendants, majority of those individuals are high schoolers, 18 or under. If you're talking lifeguards, I would say probably about half, or maybe slightly more than half. But a lot of, I would say the average age of most of our employees that are younger than they used to be. So the ones that are maybe older and have more experience are moving on to those positions where they can, and almost the number one thing we've heard is because of wages. So, I'll give you an example. The school district pays $30 to $35 an hour for summer school, help. And a lot of the people that used to be playground leaders are qualified to also be help at the schools. So when it comes to, if you look at both features, we have a lot of passionate people that have helped us out and have been here a number of years. And honestly, that is the number one probably thing that keeps them here, is the fact that they love the city and they love the park system and what we do. But majority of people are starting to hear that conversation more and more often of, look, I can't do this. It's $12 versus $33. I got to do what's best, So we're starting to hear that more often.
Yeah, and there are certain positions, very few of them, but like Bay Beach ride operators, they have to be over 18 years old in order to do it. That's a state mandate. So, also playground supervisors or playground leaders, obviously there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. And so we like to have, an older age group, or, we usually have two in each park, so maybe one could be younger and one's a little older. And try to find that balance, because there's a lot of issues in the parks that happen during the day when they're over there.
So just two things. So I asked, so I don't know if it works based on the age group, but and I don't know if you have people that start and then don't finish the seasons, that there could be a bonus that they get a certain amount for signing on, and then an additional one when they go through the end of the season, whatever that date is. And then also, would it be the option of having the same people that are doing these jobs, if they're not college students going off to college, that they would also go into the other seasonal things like working Bear Creek, the Snow Hill, things like that? I don't know, just ideas.
And this year was the first year we were able to try out the bonus pay. Because at last year's budget, there was they allocated either $20,000 or $25,000 to do a bonus pay structure for the lifeguards and pool staff. So we tried it out this year. with the pools, and we had marginal success with it. So it didn't work as good as we had hoped, but it did have some success. I don't think that that really encouraged too many people to stay the entire year, because we did have a bonus built in. If you work the whole summer, you get an extra bonus at the end. And we found that some of the bonuses work better than others.
I was just thinking, if there's a way to make it a year-round position going from one to the other, then they could get the benefits too, which I'm sure they don't because they're seasonal. Benefits like as in 401K and, municipal benefits.
Yeah, and right now, none of our seasonal positions get those benefits, even if they work the entire year, because we don't budget for that. So we do offer seasonal positions to do various tasks throughout the years, but we monitor how many hours they actually work throughout the year, so that they don't exceed that number. Because if they do exceed that number, then we have to increase our budget pretty dramatically in order to do that. But if that is actually a benefit that they're looking for, that might be worth exploring. Is it worth adding that benefit to X number of percentage of seasonal staff just to get them to come and stay and work longer? So I think it's worth looking at, definitely, but we haven't done that yet for that reason, because it's a budgetary issue.
Okay, thank you.
I will add, can I add something
Sure.
in there real quick? I just want to make you aware of what's already happening, because we kind of laughed about it, because already, like West Bend, for example, we just saw they already put out their lifeguard recruitment, increased hourly wage and bonus structure for next year already. They just put it out yesterday. So everybody's very proactive now. We were one of the first ones in the Northeast Wisconsin to offer that, and that was really nice that council approved that and offered that bonus structure. But now all the other municipalities and other people are getting creative with this as well. So I think we're going to find out a lot in about the next month about kind of what people are doing, and I think it's going to become increasingly important to really get creative on what that looks like. So I'll give you an example. West Bend just put that out. They're offering their lifeguards $17.50 an hour as a base pay, but then they have a structure where if they work 100 hours, 200 hours, 300 hours, 400 hours throughout the season, then they get increasingly like $1 more, $1.50, $2, $2.50 more on that base pay. So at the end of the season, the more hours they work, the better. The way we structured ours, like Dan said, it worked initially maybe to recruit or kind of get people to entice them to come in for the bonus. But then as the summer went on, it just kind of, most of them were like, oh, I don't know, I'm not going to stay an extra 3 weeks for $100 kind of thing. So it was, we'll just look at that too as well.
And the other thing that happened to us last year is, we set our budgets, in November. And there's other municipalities that kind of saw what we did and just paid more. So, we kind of ran into that situation last year. So people who put it out there first might get burned in the end, because everybody else might just bump it up higher.
Thanks. Alder Streck?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of good points brought up. I don't think we can solve this tonight by any means, but I think the points are brought up well, and I know budget time will be coming up soon enough. And I guess it would be nice to see a report of some sort describing or discussing the number of employees that we do have that are doing this right now, the staff, what the cost might be, and then what the bang for the buck is. The more of these folks that we have, the longer we keep the park open, the more monies, the more revenue we're making, that type of thing. So that's the bottom line. What are we getting our best bang for the buck? So I'll definitely be interested at budget time when you come forward with that. But as far as suggestions, right at this time, I would say just like James, like you were doing with West Bend, see what they did. Just look at some of these other communities, what they're doing, and you could say, you know what, I think that's a great idea. That West Bend idea sounds like a good idea. So that'd be one thing to look at, and maybe we should look at that setup moving forward. And at budget time, we can really look at it with a fine-tooth comb. That's
Thanks,
it.
Alder.
Thank you.
I appreciate the committee talking about it and discussing it. It's a big issue. I think we've all seen that. We have great parks, great amenities, but if you don't have the staff, it's sad. It's a great loss, right? If you can't fully utilize it. So be creative, be aggressive. You have our support. Let's go out there and lead. I know a lot of other alders watch this committee. If you have ideas, send it in. You guys are always thinking. We're just trying to help, so.
Obviously, if you have any other, creative suggestions, email them to us and we'll try to incorporate that into our game plan moving forward.
Nothing's too wild or crazy, bring it to us.
And I do agree, it definitely decreases the quality of life for residents when we don't have those services. Not all of them bring in revenue, like the parks themselves, Bay Beach and the pools do, but, the parks don't. It's still a really good program.
And I don't want to harp on this, spend too long on it, but just a different perspective just to keep in mind. So with the increased amount of recruiting and trying to find creative ways to get staff, I mean, now it's become, for example, for pools, again, it used to be something where in January, when it started after winter break, we would start interviewing and also recruiting and trying, getting our staff. Now it's become a year-round position, essentially, to make sure that we're recruiting already. Our last pool day is tomorrow at Joanne's, and we're already having thank you to all the pool staff, party tonight to try to then say, hey, make sure you come back and
Sign their letters of intent.
yes, letters of intent. So what I'm saying is it also reduces the ability for our rec supervisors, for example, to then do other programs because they're spending so much time on trying to recruit and get staff. So it's not just the pools that aren't filled or the playgrounds, it's also other programs that aren't run because we don't have the time allocated that we need to actually facilitate those programs as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Well, if you need to change position descriptions or whatever you need to do, times are changing, let's change it to be in the front end of the curve, not in the back. So whatever you need to do.
Yep.
If it's all right, can we just refer this to you to bring back with your more detailed?
Yes.
That's right.
I make that motion, refer back to staff.
Second.
Okay.
Motion by Alder Steuer,
Is there a time
second by
frame
Alder Eck.
for that? Time frame?
We have a motion and a second, Director. When would this be coming back? Next month?
I would say within the next month. Prior to budget.
Perfect.
To report back.
Can you repeat who?
Steuer and Eck. Any other discussion on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks. Number 4, consideration of possible action on the approval of a design, construction, and dedication agreement with Ducks Unlimited, Inc. for the construction of Phase 2 West Pond Waterfowl Nesting Habitat Project at Ken Ewers Natural Area.
So over the last several years, the city has teamed up with Ducks Unlimited and allowed them to do several projects at Ken Ewers Natural Area. So the first was they created a managed wetland, waterfowl nesting habitat just east of the parking lot. And then the second project we teamed up with them on was to install a woody breakwater into the waterway. And right now, we're currently working with them on a third project. So this third project is the development of a second controlled wetland facility. So the second location is located just west of the parking lot. So the first one's to the east of the parking lot, the second one's to the west. So this project was last discussed at the Park Committee on April 28th in 2021. And the motion at that meeting was to approve the request by Ducks Unlimited to fund and install a second controlled wetland at Ken Ewers Park west of the parking lot. Since then, Ducks Unlimited secured the funding for this project and they're nearly completed with the engineering documents. And they've also received the majority of the permits to move ahead with this project. So in order for Ducks Unlimited to be able to hire a contractor to build this, they'll have to enter into a design, construction, and dedication agreement. So this is very similar to the one that we just presented last week, or last Park Committee for a concession stand at Finger Road Landfill. The agreement is in the agenda packet if you want to see the details. And it is very similar in the language for the last two agreements that we were in place with Ducks Unlimited. So not much change. There were some minor changes, but very little. So the agreement outlines the process for the approvals that the group will have to go through in order to ensure that it's built to city standards. Items in the contract include plan review process, permitting, construction inspections, insurance requirements, and how to select approved contractors. In addition to finding the funding and hiring the contractor, they'll also be responsible to manage the construction. So the agreement details that out also. And park staff will be heavily involved in the construction inspection. So we'll be out there on a regular basis, meeting with their contractors and Ducks Unlimited to make sure that it's being built to our specifications. Once the managed wetland is completed, it will become city-owned property, and we will take on the ownership and the ongoing maintenance along with it, which is very minimal. The law department did draft this agreement, and both Ducks Unlimited and the law department and park staff are fine with the language that's included in the agenda packet, so I would recommend approval. But if you have any questions, I'm here for answers.
Thanks, Director. Any questions from committee, or I'll entertain a motion?
I'm just trying to figure out where is that located? I don't know why, but mine is very hard to read the maps.
I have a better map, which I found
Okay.
after I put out the agenda, and I can include this in the council packet, if that makes it simpler.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see on here, there's the entrance drive with the parking lot. Ken Ewers Phase 1 on this map is the original managed wetland that was built. So that was built 2-3 years ago. And then Phase 2 is the one that we're talking about now. So that is currently a pond that's there. It's just with what they're proposing to change, we'll be able to control the water level in there. So we'll be able to decrease the water level when needed and increase it when we want. And that will help control invasives. It will help us with providing necessary habitat improvements.
Any questions, Director?
So that's off of Military, oh,
Yep, so it's right off of Military Avenue.
Okay.
If you take Military and keep going past the highway, it just kind of dead ends to this natural area.
okay, all right, but out by the dog park.
Yeah, it's close to the dog park. The dog park's kind of further west.
Further out, yeah. Okay.
This
thank
is
you.
literally if you take Military and keep going
Yep.
until you hit the parking lot.
Okay, I make a
Not well
motion
lit.
to
No,
approve.
I got a question.
Oh, sorry,
All right,
Carry away.
yeah.
okay, go ahead.
I just have a question, it might not relate to this, but I didn't know that you were working with Ducks Unlimited on this. Recently, I've been addressed downtown with the city about duck hunting in the lower bay, east of Bay Beach, and the whole new dike project and all that, okay? I'd like to see a little deal done with the Ducks Unlimited to take out all that hunting down there. I know this is digging deep, but when it gets into this, and they're working with this, I think we need to try to negotiate, and I wouldn't mind getting involved, because there's people that think that they're lobbying me. I didn't even know about this project, but people are gonna think what they think. You know, they're landowners, and there's a lot of issues down there. They hope that all goes away. It falls between the Department of Natural Resources once your boots hit the water. I'm gonna go out on a limb this year and be down there for the first 3-4 days as a sportsman myself, and just say, hey, come on, guys, obey the rules, and everyone's happy. And there's a lot of water out there. Right over here is great. Maybe this will. I heard it's great down there, but respect the landowner. It's the #1 rule of being a sportsman, you know. So I'm really gonna go out of my way. I'm gonna go down there with the Green Bay Police, hopefully at opening day, and I'm gonna try to bring some friendliness to show the effort, see if it works. Signs ain't enough. You know, there's a lot of things that go wrong. I mean, and then honest, nobody's really trying to take it away, but if Ducks Unlimited can get behind a little bit a safety issue, let alone a city ordinance issue, it's wasting a lot of time and a lot of money of our city, shortened police staff. Granted, they just get done with this nightlife, and then they gotta go over here, they might as well just go park over there, because they're gonna be getting calls. There's gonna be people calling every single day. Now, personally, I'm a sportsman, but if I lived down there, I don't know if I'd wanna wake up. I can hear it from my house. I'm a mile away. I can hear the shots, okay? I mean, we got a park. I don't even think really a sportsman, and I'm speaking for myself, is it really a sportsman to be hunting within a half a mile of a sanctuary? You know? I mean, it's like, that's where they go.
That's another.
So, to me, that's not a good rep for Ducks Unlimited. I think they would take the high ground on this and go, there's a lot to the north, there's a lot over in the wetlands area. I'd like to see that somehow incorporated into some negotiations.
Appreciate it. Alder Kimball?
So it's not really on the issue, but maybe it is, because maybe it'll draw more people that way. So all the money that they're putting in there, I'd like to see a little reinforcement, and maybe even, I would love, I was gonna get some campaign signs made, and I came up with the idea, until you mentioned Duck Unlimited, I couldn't wait to raise my hand here. Even getting their endorsement right on that sign, and just, sportsmen, please obey the rule. The ordinances are there, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna print it off, I got it right here, I'm gonna be handing them out to people, just as a friendly reminder, you know, because how would you put yourself in them
I think
language?
Alder Kimball, that's probably a whole, as you know, a whole nother discussion,
that's a whole nother
because I
discussion.
know your
That's
predecessor,
not-
my mother-in-law,
Yeah,
dealt
I
with
know.
that for years, and it's a challenging one.
But I
The
didn't know
hunting
Ducks
along the
Unlimited was
bay by Bay
involved in
Beach
this,
up the
so-
shore.
Oh, yeah, so
That's,
would maybe
you
a
made a
communication for a future, maybe?
I'll let Alder
Sorry
Kimball decide
to
how he
stretch
wants
it
to
out
do
there,
it.
but I just wanted to
But
kind
I think this project is already so far along, and they do such a great job over here, I would hate to spoil this.
Yeah, no, no,
But your point is well taken.
okay, sorry.
No,
You
no,
went away,
motions.
but
Alder Eck, you made a motion? I
approve.
second that motion.
Motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Stoyer to approve under discussion. I didn't want to cut you off there, but it's tied in, but not quite, so. Those in favor?
Tried.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, motion carried.
do we know if anybody on the floor is curious to get them?
I think most people are here for improvement service, I believe, right? Anybody here for parks now? Okay, we're almost done.
We're-
I think by 9 o'clock,
We'll wait.
No,
we'll wait on if we can do it. Okay, no, we're on number 5 right now, and there's only 6 items, so. Number 5, consideration with possible action on a request by Wisconsin Public Service for a utility easement at the Finger Road Ball Field Complex.
So we've discussed this project in the past, so the city is working with a donor group to install a concession stand with restrooms at the Finger Road Ball Field Complex. And as part of that agreement, the city will be installing all of the underground utilities to the building, and then the user group will be building the building. And so as part of that, we have to install underground power source to the building, and that will be provided by Wisconsin Public Service. And per WPS requirements, their policy is they will only install electric services if there's a formal easement in place, and then they'll install those services within that easement. So this is a request that the city brought forward so that they could get power to that proposed concession stand. We are supportive of it, obviously, because we want the power there. And I guess the only comment that I have is the law department has not reviewed this in detail yet. But typically, it's a very similar contract. We've gone through a lot of these easements in the past. They usually have very standard language. But I would just make a recommendation in there that you make it, if you do approve this, that you make it conditional upon the law department review and approval of the final easement language.
Your wishes.
What you said, approve with the, all the, I don't know, with the law department looking
The
over and
love of the
approving
law
it.
department.
With the,
I thought you said the love.
The
The law
love?
department loves it? No. Okay.
I don't know how I said it, but
Approval.
I'll second that.
whatever I said, whatever he said.
So
is what
motion
I
by
was
Eck, second by Alder Stoyer to. Something's going on up here. Okay. Did you get that, Director?
Yes, I did.
Well,
Approved
he's the one who
with
said-
the approval of the law department.
Yes.
The review.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any discussion on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 6, consideration with possible action on the report of the purchasing manager. A is discussion of possible action on the purchase of Bobcat Toolcat UW56 and attachments from Clark Equipment Company doing business as Bobcat Plus Inc. for the sum of $84,529.88.
So this quote did go through a Sourcewell contract, and they have a local discount. So it didn't go through the traditional competitive quote process. So Sourcewell is an entity that does bidding for machinery and equipment throughout the country, and then we purchase whoever they have as the lowest vendor. So they kind of do the quoting process for it, and then our municipality and other municipalities can just buy it at their negotiated rate. So that's the process that we went through for the quote process. So we only have one official quote, but like I said, it was competitively quoted out. And we're replacing a toolcat that was from 2008 and it was used for snow removal, spreading wood chips, and various other park tasks. It is in really rough condition. It needs to be replaced. We did budget for this in our capital improvement plan. And so along with the piece of equipment, we're purchasing a bucket, a broom, and a snow blower along with the machine.
Questions? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alder Steuer, second by Alder Eck to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 6B is discussion and possible action on the purchase of Bobcat S64T4, Bobcat skid steer, loader, and attachments from Clark Equipment doing business as Bobcat Plus for the sum of $56,191.91.
So for this one, we went through the same quote process through that company. And for this one, we're replacing a 1999 Bobcat that was primarily used between parks and forestry. So with this one, we're purchasing the machine, a bucket, and then a grapple to grab onto the logs. And so that's what's included in the price. And again, this one was budgeted for and we had money for it.
Committee.
Move to approve?
Motion by Alder Eck,
Second.
second by Alder Campbell. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Informational Director's Report.
I don't have anything specifically to point out as far as the director's report, but if you have questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer.
I do have one question.
Start down there.
Just a
We'll
quick
start on this
question.
end. We'll start.
Director, I was just wondering, as far as Perkins Park, we'll be talking about that coming up. Is there any kind of a date or something that, other information with the neighbors?
Yeah, I don't have a specific date yet. I know we've been talking about it. I'm hopeful that in about a month we'll have something to present on that. I do have to check it. As I mentioned, we are hiring a consultant for that to help with the disc golf design. So I really have to check on the schedule for when that portion's going to be completed, and then I can get you an updated, more refined schedule once I have that completion date.
Because I know there's different, you got the disc golf course, you got the tree issue, you got the ballpark, different things. I would like kind of a comprehensive look
Yep.
at that with the neighbors.
And that's what the game plan is so, we're starting with the disc golf course, and then we're going to design a comprehensive master plan built around that, a planting master plan. And so it will remain a natural area just like it is now. We heard that was the desire of the neighborhood when we had the public input meeting, and we're going to continue to keep it that way. It's going to be more or less a planting plan more than anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder Steuer. Did you have anything, Alder Eck?
No.
No. Yeah, Alder Campbell.
Same thing, updated on the Fireland Park thing. I know I called you the other day. I left a message. You
Yeah.
left a message for me.
Yeah, so this
Where
was
we at on that?
a question in regards to the ARPA request. If you recall, Alder Campbell put in a request for improvements to Farland Park. And so all that I know at this point is we have to wait for the council approval of the ARPA requests so that we know how much is left in the pot if things change next week. So the game plan right now is anything that was referred to staff, we'll wait to see what happens at the council meeting, and then from there, city staff will meet to put together the recommendations from there. So I don't have a timeline for the revised recommendations, but until we know how much money is left over after next week's meeting, it's hard to put together that comprehensive staff request or staff
So
recommendation.
that won't have a chance to be referred to council then again? Or?
Well, at next week's meeting, you can bring that up, and if you want to add that to the funded projects, that would be your prerogative. If you want to change the recommendation coming out of last week's meeting, that would be up to you. Otherwise, the process is whatever happens at that meeting. If that wasn't approved at next week's meeting, then it will be referred to staff, and then at that point, we'll go through and see how that fits in with all of the other recommended projects. And as a staff, we'll make another recommendation to the committee at a later date. But I don't know the timeline for the second recommendation.
Well, I don't wanna go blasting it out there neither. You know, just thought maybe there'd be something ready for at least like a redesign sketch, not an official. I know when we discussed it at our party, you know, when we had designed this whole thing, it was, you know what some of these cost. We need to get some costs right on the, you know, compared to all the other parks, you know. I think it'd be nice to see a detailed price list there.
And I guess I would say you and I should probably have a separate side conversation,
Okay.
because I don't know if this topic was directly included in the director's report or not, without actually going through the report. So I think we can have a separate
Okay.
a separate discussion outside of this meeting.
All right.
Anything else? Campbell? No? I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Motion to adjourn?
Uh,
Or receive and place on file the
You're easy.
informational
Second.
director's report.
Motion by Alder Eck, second by Alder Storch. Receive and place on file. Any discussion on that? Those in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Now move
Next
to-
meeting is scheduled September 14th.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Sawyer,
Second.
second by Alder Campbell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. We'll
I
probably
need a
end up,
1-minute break.
we take 5 minutes while the staffs change out and get computers fired up and
So what to-
people empty their bladder.